Imagine this. You walk into a room, greet a friend, and they smile, but something feels off. Their words are polite, but their tone is cold. They nod, but their eyes don't meet yours. You tell yourself it's nothing, but deep down, you sense it. Something isn't right. The Stoics had a simple truth. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. For it is the truth I seek, and the truth never harmed anyone. Marcus Aurelius. Sometimes the truth is that not everyone likes us, and some will go to great lengths to hide it. Their words may be friendly, but their actions tell another story. Today, we'll uncover the subtle signs that reveal what someone truly feels about you. Have you ever sensed hidden dislike from someone? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Now let's get started. Number 1, they're always joking about your flaws. We've all encountered that one person who always has a joke ready, especially when you're the punchline. They tease you about your habits, your dreams, your so-called imperfections. And when you hesitate, they flash a grin and say, "Relax, I'm just joking." At first it seems harmless, maybe even a sign of camaraderie. But over time, a pattern emerges. Their jokes always seem to target your vulnerabilities, never your strengths. They never highlight your intelligence, your kindness, or your resilience. Instead, it's always about your mistakes, your quirks, the things you might already feel insecure about. And the worst part? They make it seem like you are the problem if you don't laugh along. But let's get one thing straight. People who consistently joke about your flaws aren't doing it out of affection. They're testing the waters, seeing how much disrespect you're willing to tolerate. It's a subtle form of manipulation, a quiet way of asserting dominance while keeping you in your place. They're telling you, without saying it outright, that you are beneath them. And because society has conditioned us to believe that if you can't take a joke, you're too sensitive, they get away with it. But the Stoics teach us something different. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In other words, the moment you allow their words to define you, you give them power. But the opposite is also true. The moment you recognize the game they're playing, you take that power back. I learned this lesson the hard way. There was a time when I let these kinds of jokes slide, thinking it was easier to keep the peace than to confront the disrespect. But I slowly realized that every time I laughed along, I was silently agreeing. I was telling them it was okay to treat me that way, and so they continued. Until one day I stopped. I stopped laughing. I stopped letting them dictate how I saw myself. And when I did, everything changed, not just in how they treated me, but in how I viewed my own worth. Here's the truth. Allowing small jabs to go unchecked is a slippery slope. It starts with a casual joke, but over time, it erodes your confidence, making you question yourself. The more you tolerate it, the more they push. And before you know it, you're left wondering if maybe, just maybe, you are as flawed as they make you out to be, but you're not. So the next time someone makes a joke at your expense, pause. Ask yourself, is this really harmless fun, or is there something deeper going on? If it's the latter, don't be afraid to set boundaries. Call it out. And if that makes them uncomfortable, good, because real friends don't need to tear you down to build themselves up. The people who truly value you will never use your insecurities as their entertainment. In the end, life is too short to surround yourself with those who thrive on belittling others. So stand tall, speak up, and never let anyone reduce you to a punchline. Number 2, they give compliments that sting like insults. It's the kind of praise that feels more like a well-aimed slap wrapped in velvet. You pause, replaying their words in your mind, wondering, wait, was that a compliment or an insult? Here's the harsh truth. Often, it's both. These backhanded compliments are not accidental. They are calculated moves designed to make you second-guess your worth while the other person maintains a facade of kindness. I remember a time when I poured my heart into a project I was truly proud of. After countless hours of effort, I finally shared it with a group of colleagues. One of them, someone I had assumed was supportive, smiled and said, "Wow, this is actually pretty good for someone like you." I stood there momentarily stunned. On the surface, it seemed like a compliment, but those last few words, "for someone like you," hit like a hammer. What did that mean? Was I not supposed to be capable of doing good work? And that's the real issue. These disguised insults aren't meant to encourage. They're subtle power plays, a way for the other person to remind you of your place while keeping the upper hand. They want you to hear the praise, but more importantly, they want you to absorb the unspoken message. You'll never be as good as me. Why do people do this? Because often they are insecure themselves. They see your growth, your potential, and it unsettles them. So rather than openly admit their discomfort, they use these carefully crafted words to make you doubt yourself. It's their way of keeping you in check, offering you a pat on the back while simultaneously holding you down. But here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. We've all done it at some point, maybe unintentionally, but we've all let our insecurities slip into the way we speak about others. That's the nature of human ego. It wants to protect itself, even at the expense of others. So what's the Stoic way to handle this? Simple. See these words for what they are, a reflection of their internal struggles, not a measure of your worth. When someone says, "You're smarter than you look," or "This is great," considering you're new at this, you don't have to accept it. You don't have to absorb their disguised negativity. Instead, challenge it. When I hear a backhanded compliment now, I respond with a calm but direct, "Thanks, but what do you mean by that?" It's incredible how quickly this simple question shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, they're forced to confront the insult hidden in their words. More often than not, they scramble to clarify, realizing you're not playing along with their subtle power game. The takeaway? Never let someone else's veiled negativity define you. Whether it comes from a so-called friend, a jealous coworker, or even a family member, remember this. Your worth is not up for debate. A true compliment lifts you up. It doesn't weigh you down with doubt. If someone's words leave you questioning yourself, don't question your abilities. Question their intentions. Life is too short to keep people around who celebrate you with strings attached. Choose to surround yourself with those who see your value and aren't afraid to express it, genuinely, honestly, and without hidden agendas. Number 3, they subtly exclude you from plans. Sometimes the sharpest betrayals come not from words, but from silence. You check your phone and see pictures of your friends at a dinner, a party, or a weekend getaway, one you were never invited to. When you bring it up, they offer weak excuses. "Oh, we thought you were busy. It was so last minute." But deep down, you know the truth. If they had truly wanted you there, they would have made sure you knew about it. This isn't just forgetfulness. It's a message, a silent way of saying, "You're not really part of us." And because they don't have the courage to be upfront, they exclude you in ways that can't easily be confronted. They hope you'll just fade away quietly without forcing them to acknowledge what they're doing. It's passive-aggressive, it's cowardly, and yet it's incredibly common. I've experienced this firsthand. I remember one weekend, scrolling through my feed and seeing a group of friends out together at an event I would have loved to attend. Not one of them had mentioned it to me beforehand. When I casually asked about it later, they stumbled over their responses. "Oh, it was so last minute. We didn't think you'd be interested." But the reality was clear. I wasn't on their minds. And if you're not on someone's mind, you're certainly not a priority in their life. The more you accept these excuses, the more you enable this treatment. By staying silent, by letting it slide, you give them permission to keep treating you as an afterthought. You allow them to define your place in their world instead of taking control of your own. I had to learn this the hard way. For a long time, I convinced myself that the exclusions were unintentional, that next time would be different. But it wasn't until I decided to change the pattern that things shifted. I started addressing it directly. I'd ask, "Hey, I saw you all went out last weekend. Why wasn't I invited?" It was uncomfortable. Yes, some people got defensive. Others tried to make up for it. But one thing became clear. When people know you won't accept being overlooked, they either start treating you with respect or they reveal their true colors. The Stoics remind us that we should see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. And the reality is simple. People who want you in their life will make an effort. If they don't, it's time to reevaluate the relationship. Know your worth. You deserve to be around those who include you, not as an obligation, but because they genuinely enjoy your presence. So if you find yourself being subtly excluded, don't ignore it. Confront it. Ask the difficult questions and be prepared for the answers, even if they aren't what you want to hear. Because at the end of the day, it's better to know your place in someone's life than to keep wondering why you were left out again. You are not a backup plan. You are not an afterthought. Surround yourself with people who treat you like a priority, because that's exactly what you deserve. Number 4, they're busy only when it comes to you. We've all heard it before. I'm so busy these days, sorry, I just don't have time. It's the perfect excuse. After all, who isn't busy? But then you start noticing a pattern. They always seem to have time for others, grabbing coffee, going out, posting pictures of their latest get-togethers. Yet when it comes to you, they're suddenly swamped. Here's the hard truth. They're not too busy. They're just too busy for you. I've been there. I remember reaching out to a friend I once considered close, trying to set up a time to catch up. Every suggestion was met with an excuse. I'm working late, maybe next week. Things are just hectic right now. But then I'd see them making time for others, laughing over dinner, showing up for events. Always available, just never for me. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to see the reality. I simply wasn't a priority in their life anymore. And that's where the real lesson comes in. Society conditions us to accept busy as a valid excuse. But let's be honest, people make time for who and what they truly care about. If someone consistently has no time for you, but plenty for others, it's not about their schedule. It's about their priorities. And that's a difficult truth to swallow because it forces you to confront the fact that you might care more about them than they care about you. The Stoics teach us to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. And the reality is, I'm busy is often just a polite way of saying, I don't want to spend time with you. It's easier for them to blame their schedule than to admit they've outgrown the relationship. They want to keep you at arm's length without having to deal with the confrontation of telling you outright. I've been on both sides of this. There were times when I avoided someone, not because I hated them, but because I didn't know how to say, this friendship isn't what it used to be. But being on the receiving end taught me something invaluable. Honesty, no matter how uncomfortable, is always better than false excuses. So when I finally confronted my friend and asked directly, do you actually want to meet up, or are we just pretending? The conversation was awkward but necessary. It gave me the clarity I needed to move on and invest in people who genuinely valued my presence. Your time and energy are precious. Don't waste them on people who can't be bothered to make space for you. True friends don't just fit you in when it's convenient. They make an effort because they want to. And sometimes the most stoic thing you can do is accept when a relationship has run its course. Let go with grace and move forward without bitterness. Not because you don't care, but because you value yourself enough to stop chasing those who no longer choose you. Number 5, they avoid physical contact like the plague. Let's talk about something most people overlook, physical contact, or rather the lack of it. We're not just talking about romance. Even in friendships and casual interactions, touch is a fundamental part of human connection. A handshake, a friendly pat on the back, or a casual touch on the arm. These are subtle but powerful ways we communicate trust and warmth. So what does it mean when someone goes out of their way to avoid even the smallest touch with you? The answer isn't pretty. They're uncomfortable around you, and their body language is saying what their words won't. I once had a colleague who seemed to recoil every time I reached out for a handshake. At first, I brushed it off as overthinking, but then I noticed they had no issue being warm and tactile with others. Around me, though, they stiffened up, leaned away, or made sure there was always distance between us. It wasn't just a personality trait. It was a deliberate effort to keep me at arm's length. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People who avoid physical contact with you, but not with others, are sending a message. Sure, some individuals just aren't touchy-feely, and that's completely fine. But when they're comfortable hugging or high-fiving others while noticeably withdrawing from you, it's a red flag. Their body language is revealing a discomfort they won't admit out loud. And let's be honest, we've all been on both sides of this. Maybe you've instinctively leaned back when someone got too close, simply because you weren't comfortable around them. Or maybe you've been on the receiving end, wondering why someone flinched when you reached out for a simple handshake. It's awkward, but it's also revealing. The Stoics teach us to see reality clearly, without illusions. And the reality here is that physical contact represents more than just touch. It symbolizes trust, openness, and connection. When someone avoids it with you, they're not just avoiding touch, they're avoiding you. I've learned to pay attention to these cues, even when they're hard to accept. I used to ignore them, convincing myself it was nothing. But when I finally addressed the situation, it led to honest conversations. And in some cases, the realization that the relationship wasn't as strong as I thought. So here's the deep message. Don't ignore the signs. If someone consistently avoids physical contact with you, but is comfortable with others, it's worth addressing. It might open the door to deeper understanding, or it might reveal a truth you've been avoiding. Either way, it's better to confront reality than to live in denial. You deserve relationships where physical presence feels natural, not strained. Whether it's a handshake, a friendly hug, or just sitting close without discomfort, these small gestures build trust. If someone makes a habit of avoiding them, don't be afraid to ask the tough questions, and, if necessary, make the tough decisions. Because life is too short to chase after people who keep you at a distance, literally and figuratively. Number 6, they disappear when you need support. Nothing reveals the true nature of a relationship like hardship. When life is good, friendships feel effortless. Laughter, celebrations, shared successes. But when everything falls apart, when you're struggling, hurting, or in need, that's when you see people's true colors. And if someone vanishes the moment you need them the most, that's not just flakiness. It's a clear sign that you were never a priority in their life. I learned this the hard way. I was going through one of the most difficult times in my life, something that truly shook me. Naturally, I turned to the people I had always been there for, expecting even the smallest gesture of support, a message, a call, anything. But what did I get? Silence. Suddenly they were too busy, too overwhelmed, too caught up in their own lives to check in. And despite their promises of, "I'll reach out soon," they never did. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Many people love to claim they'll always be there for you, but when things get tough, they choose to disappear. They'll celebrate with you, enjoy the fun moments, but when you need them most, they don't want to deal with the weight of your problems. Not because they can't, but because they don't care enough to show up. And that's the reality most of us don't want to admit. True support isn't about convenience. It's not about being there when it's easy. It's about showing up even when it's uncomfortable, even when it requires effort. The people who disappear in your darkest moments aren't just letting you down. They're revealing exactly where you stand in their life. I remember feeling crushed when I realized that those I had supported through their struggles, breakups, career failures, personal crises, were nowhere to be found when I needed them. But over time, I realized it was a lesson, not a loss. The Stoics teach us that hardship is a filter. It separates what is meaningful from what is superficial. And in this case, it showed me who truly valued me and who was simply along for the ride. So here's the deeper message. Don't let their absence make you bitter. Let it make you wiser. Use it as a filter to separate those who genuinely care from those who were only there for convenience. The ones who check in, who show up even when it's inconvenient. Those are the people worth keeping in your life. Life is too short to invest in fair-weather friends. Surround yourself with those who will stand beside you in the storm, not just bask in the sunshine. Because when you find those rare few who stay when the world feels heavy, you've found something truly worth holding on to. And as for those who disappear, let them go. They've already told you everything you need to know. Number 7, they gossip about you behind your back. Gossip is a silent poison. It spreads faster than wildfire, eroding trust and shattering relationships in its wake. And make no mistake, gossip is never as harmless as people pretend it to be. When someone you consider a friend speaks about you behind your back, they aren't just sharing a story, they're weaponizing your trust. I've been there. I once confided in someone I believed was a true friend, sharing a personal struggle in a moment of vulnerability. I trusted them to keep it between us, but within days, whispers started circulating. My words, twisted and exaggerated, had become fuel for others' entertainment. It was like a cruel game of telephone, except the message wasn't getting lost. It was being used against me. And that's the brutal truth. People who gossip about you aren't just venting, they're playing a power game. Gossip allows them to elevate themselves while subtly tearing you down, all without facing you directly. It's cowardly, it's manipulative, and it's toxic. One thing I've learned, those who gossip to you will gossip about you. It's not a one-time betrayal, it's a pattern. I've lost count of how many times I've seen someone eagerly spill other people's secrets, only to suddenly fall silent when I was around. That's when I knew I was probably their topic of conversation when I wasn't in the room. When I confronted the so-called friend who betrayed my trust, I expected an apology or at least an explanation. Instead, they shrugged it off. It was just talk, nothing serious. But here's the thing, gossip is never just talk. It's a betrayal, plain and simple. And it speaks volumes about the person spreading it, far more than about the person it's about. The Stoics teach us to see people for who they truly are, not who we wish they were. When someone consistently disrespects, excludes, or undermines you, believe their actions. True friendships don't make you question your worth. Have you noticed these signs in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this message resonated with you, like and subscribe for more insights on strength, wisdom, and self-respect. Stay true to yourself. Surround yourself with those who uplift you. And remember, the right people will never make you feel unwanted. See you in the next video, in the next.